She looked me straight in the eye at her own wedding and said, "Go away, you're not family anymore." I was holding the $50,000 check I'd written for her dream day. The same granddaughter I'd raised when her parents abandoned her. The woman I'd sacrificed everything for was dismissing me like some unwelcome stranger at the reception I'd helped pay for. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I stood there in my best suit, the one Margaret had picked out for me before she died, watching Emma in her $8,000 wedding dress that I'd paid for. The reception hall buzzed with 150 guests, most of whom I'd never met. College friends, business associates, Marcus's hedge fund crowd, people who'd never heard the story of how I found Emma crying on my doorstep at 3 years old, clutching a dirty stuffed rabbit while her parents drove away to chase their next high. "Grandpa, I need you to leave," Emma continued, her voice carrying that practiced tone she'd developed since meeting Marcus. "You're not family anymore. Marcus says you're too negative for our new life." I felt the check crumple in my grip. $50,000 for their honeymoon in Italy. The same amount I'd spent on her college textbooks over 4 years. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Marcus standing behind her, that smug smile playing at his lips like he'd just won something. "You represent the old way of thinking, Grandpa, always talking about struggle and hard work. We don't need that energy in our lives anymore." The wedding guests had started to notice. Conversations died. Phones came out. I could feel their eyes on me, this old man being publicly rejected by his own granddaughter. At 72, I was being discarded like an embarrassing relic at an event I'd partially funded. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't even raise my voice. I simply tore the check in half, right there in front of her. Then I tore it again. The pieces fluttered to the marble floor like confetti. "I understand, Emma. You're absolutely right." My voice came out steady, controlled. "If I'm not family, then family privileges don't apply." The silence stretched between us. Emma's face went pale under her makeup. Marcus's smirk faltered. I turned and walked toward the exit, my footsteps echoing across the reception hall. Behind me, I heard Emma call out, but I didn't turn around. The security guard Marcus had positioned near the door opened it for me with something that might have been respect. As I stepped into the cool evening air, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. But she forgot one crucial thing. Everything she owned was still in my name. 6 months earlier, none of this would have seemed possible. Emma called me every Sunday morning like clockwork. She'd stop by for dinner twice a week, bringing flowers for Margaret's grave and stories about her boutique. We'd sit on the porch of the house I'd built with my own hands, and she'd ask about the old days, about Margaret, about how I'd built my construction company from nothing. I remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a Tuesday in March when she called to cancel our weekly dinner. "Sorry, Grandpa, but Marcus is taking me to some charity gala. Networking, you know, building connections for the future." Marcus. Even his name felt wrong in my mouth. Some hedge fund prince with soft hands and a trust fund, who'd never worked a real day in his life. Emma had met him at a gallery opening 2 months earlier, and suddenly everything about her started shifting. The calls became shorter, the visits less frequent. Sunday dinners turned into Sunday phone calls, then Sunday texts, then silence. I should have seen the signs when she started returning my calls 3 days late. But I kept hoping it was just a phase. New relationships do that to people, especially young women. I remembered how Margaret had made me rearrange my whole world when we were dating, so I waited. I paid her bills. I sent flowers on her birthday. I even increased the monthly allowance I'd been giving her since Margaret died. Emma was 23 when Margaret passed. I'd been paying for everything since then. The mortgage on the $1.2 million house I'd bought for Margaret's dream, Emma's boutique loan payments, her car insurance, even her grocery bills. Not because I had to, but because she was all the family I had left. The house had been Margaret's vision. "Harold," she'd said while we were planning it, "build something beautiful, something that will last for generations." I'd poured everything into that house. Custom millwork, imported marble, a garden that took 3 years to mature. When Margaret got sick, she made me promise to keep it in the family. Emma will raise her children there, Margaret had whispered in those final weeks. Our legacy will continue. After the funeral, Emma had been lost, grieving. It felt natural to let her live there rent-free. She was my granddaughter. The house was too big for me alone anyway. I moved into a modest apartment downtown and felt good knowing Emma was surrounded by Margaret's memory. I'd given Emma my wife's entire jewelry collection too. $300,000 worth of pieces Margaret had collected over 40 years. Diamond earrings from our anniversary trips, the pearl necklace from our wedding day, rings and bracelets that held decades of memories. Emma had cried when I handed over the jewelry box. "Are you sure, Grandpa? This should stay with you. Margaret wanted you to have them," I'd told her. She always said you had her taste. What I didn't mention was the loan documentation Patricia had insisted on. For tax purposes, my lawyer had explained. Large gifts like this need to be properly documented. Emma had signed the papers without reading them. Why would she? I was her grandfather. I loved her. The documents were just bureaucracy. The boutique had been Emma's dream since college. "I want to create something beautiful, Grandpa, like you did with your company." She'd found the perfect location, drawn up business plans, calculated profit margins, but banks don't lend to 25-year-olds without collateral. So I'd co-signed everything. The business loan, the equipment financing, even the lease on her storefront. My construction company's credit backed every dollar of her $400,000 investment. "Grandpa, Marcus says successful people don't dwell on the past like you do." That's when I knew I was losing her. It was a Thursday afternoon call, and Emma's voice carried a different tone. Distant, slightly condescending. "What does that mean exactly?" I'd asked. "You're always talking about the old days, about how hard things used to be. Marcus says that kind of thinking holds people back. We need to focus on building the future, not reliving the past." I'd sat in my apartment after that call, staring at the photo of Emma's college graduation. The same girl who used to beg for stories about how I'd built my first house with second-hand lumber was now embarrassed by my history. But I didn't know then that my life was about to be destroyed in the next 10 minutes. 2 weeks before the wedding, I drove to the house to deliver Margaret's pearl necklace. Emma had begged to wear it for the ceremony, and I'd finally decided Margaret would have wanted that. The necklace had been Margaret's grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of women who'd worn it on their wedding days. I still had my key. It was my house after all, even if Emma had been living there for 5 years. I'd called ahead but got voicemail, so I decided to leave the necklace on her dresser with a note. The front door opened to the smell of expensive coffee and Emma's laughter floating from the kitchen. I smiled, remembering Sunday mornings when that same laughter had filled the house while Margaret made pancakes. But as I got closer, I heard Emma's voice more clearly. She was on the phone, and she was talking about me. "Once we're married, we'll put Grandpa in Sunset Manor. It's $8,000 a month, but he can afford it." I froze in the hallway, the jewelry box heavy in my hands. "Then we get full ownership of this house, and Marcus can finally move his home office here. The old man's been useful, but he's becoming a liability." The words hit me like a physical blow. Liability, useful. Put him away. Emma's voice continued, casual and calculating. "All that negativity about working hard and earning your way, so it's so outdated. Marcus says successful people focus on optimization, not sentiment." I heard Marcus's voice in the background, muffled but agreeable. "The nursing home has excellent reviews," Emma went on. "Private rooms, activities, medical staff. He'll be much better cared for than we can provide. And honestly, he's been getting more depressing since Grandma died. Always sitting alone talking about the past. It's not healthy for him or us." My legs felt weak. I leaned against the hallway wall, the same wall I'd painted myself when Margaret picked out the color, sage green. She'd called it peaceful and timeless. They weren't just planning to abandon me. They were planning to warehouse me while living in the house I'd built, spending the money I'd earned, wearing the jewelry I'd given out of love. I turned and left silently. The same way I'd entered. The pearl necklace stayed in my pocket. That's when I realized Emma wasn't just ungrateful, she was dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by photos of Emma growing up, trying to reconcile the child I'd raised with the woman I'd overheard. The little girl who used to climb onto my lap and ask about Margaret's jewelry. The teenager who'd cried in my arms when boys broke her heart. The young woman who'd thanked me through tears when I co-signed her business loan. But every memory now felt contaminated by her words. Liability. Useful. Put him away. On Friday morning, I called Patricia Hendricks, my lawyer for the past 20 years. Patricia had handled Margaret's estate, my business and corporations, every major legal decision in my adult life. Harold, you sound troubled. What's going on? I told her everything. The overheard conversation, the nursing home plans, the casual way Emma had discussed my disposal. Patricia listened without interrupting, the way she always did when processing complex situations. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Harold, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want to know your legal options, or do you want to vent about family disappointment? I want to know every legal option I have. Everything. Then come in today. Bring all the documentation we have on Emma's living arrangements and loans. Patricia's office felt different that afternoon. Professional, cold. For 20 years our meetings had been friendly, almost familial. Patricia had known Margaret, had attended her funeral, had helped me navigate widowhood with compassion, but today felt like warfare preparation. The house deed is in your name only, Patricia explained, spreading documents across her conference table. Emma has no legal claim despite living there rent-free for 5 years. No tenant protections because there's no lease agreement and no payment history. She pulled out another file. The jewelry is documented as loans, not gifts. Emma signed loan agreements when she was 23, acknowledging each piece as borrowed property returnable on demand. My throat felt tight. I'd never intended those documents as weapons. Her boutique loan has your signature as primary guarantor, meaning you can call the debt due at any time. If she can't pay and based on these financials she can't you can seize business assets to satisfy the debt. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying my face. You have complete legal control, Harold. The question is, how far do you want to go? I spent that weekend walking through the city, trying to find clarity, past the construction sites where my crews were building new projects, past the park where I used to push Emma on swings, past the cemetery where Margaret rested under a headstone Emma hadn't visited in 6 months. By Monday morning, my decision was clear. If Emma wanted to treat me like a business transaction, then business it would be. Patricia prepared 3 sets of documents that week. House eviction notices, loan acceleration papers, jewelry reclamation forms, each one legal, proper, and completely devastating to the life Emma had built on my generosity. Are you certain about this, Harold? Patricia asked as I signed the final papers. Once these are filed, there's no undoing the damage to your relationship. I thought about Emma's voice on the phone. Liability. Outdated. Put him away. The damage is already done, Patricia. I'm just making it visible. By the morning of her wedding, I had 3 signed documents that would change everything. I arrived at Emma's wedding with a smile I'd practiced in the mirror that morning. $50,000 in my jacket pocket, along with 3 folded documents that would destroy the life she'd built on my sacrifices. The ceremony was beautiful, I had to admit. Emma looked radiant in her designer dress, walking down an aisle decorated with flowers that cost more than most people's cars. The venue was everything she'd dreamed of. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, enough elegance to impress Marcus's hedge fund colleagues. I'd paid for half of it, $20,000 for the venue, another $15,000 for the photography, $5,000 for the flowers. Each expense had felt like an investment in Emma's happiness, back when I still believed in her love. Marcus stood at the altar in his $1,000 suit, looking like he'd won the lottery, which, in a way, he had. He was marrying a woman who came with $1 million house, a thriving business, and a grandfather wealthy enough to fund their lifestyle indefinitely. During the ceremony, I watched Emma's face as she recited her vows. She looked genuinely happy, genuinely in love. For a moment, I wondered if I'd misunderstood her phone conversation. Maybe the nursing home talk was just confused planning, not calculated betrayal. But then Marcus smiled at her, that same smug expression he'd worn while discussing my disposal, and I remembered exactly what they'd planned for me. The reception began with champagne toasts and congratulations. I hung back watching Emma float through the crowd like the princess she'd always believed herself to be. Her college friends hugged her and admired her dress. Marcus's colleagues shook his hand and talked about market opportunities. No one mentioned the old man who'd made it all possible. I waited until the dinner service, when everyone was seated and comfortable. Then I approached Emma's table with the envelope containing my wedding gift. "Emma, sweetheart, you look radiant. Grandma would be so proud." She turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Grandpa, thank you for coming. I know this isn't really your scene." "Not my scene. The wedding I'd helped fund wasn't my scene." "I brought your wedding gift," I said, holding out the envelope, "for your honeymoon in Italy." Emma's smile became genuine for the first time all day. "Of course I did. Your family." The word hung between us. Family. The same word she'd used to exclude me 2 weeks ago during her phone call. But her response destroyed the last piece of my heart that still believed in family. "Grandpa, you need to understand, Marcus and I are building something new, something positive." Emma's voice carried that patient tone people use with difficult children. "You represent the old way of thinking, always talking about struggle and hard work. We don't need that energy in our lives anymore." The wedding guests at nearby tables had started listening. Conversations died as people sensed drama unfolding. "I appreciate everything you've done for me," Emma continued, her voice getting stronger, more certain. "But Marcus says successful people don't carry emotional baggage from the past. We need to focus on our future, not your memories." Marcus leaned forward, his hand possessive on Emma's shoulder. "It's nothing personal, Harold. It's just time for Emma to evolve beyond family dependency." Family dependency. 25 years of love, sacrifice, and support reduced to dependency. I felt the stares of 150 wedding guests, their phones recording my humiliation for social media posterity. College kids who'd never worked a day in their lives watching an old man get discarded by his granddaughter. "Grandpa, I need you to leave," Emma said, her voice carrying across the reception hall. "You're not family anymore. This is our day, our new beginning. We can't have negativity disrupting our celebration." The envelope in my hands felt heavier, $50,000. Enough money to buy a car, pay off student loans, or fund a small business, the same amount I'd spent on Emma's textbooks during college. Instead of begging or arguing, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I tore the envelope in half. The check inside ripped cleanly down the middle. Then I tore it again. And again. The pieces of my wedding gift fluttered to the marble floor like confetti, each fragment representing years of love now worthless. "I understand, Emma. You're absolutely right." My voice stayed level, controlled, almost peaceful. "If I'm not family, then family privileges don't apply." The reception hall had gone completely quiet. Even the catering staff had stopped moving. Emma's face went pale under her carefully applied makeup. "Family gets unconditional support," I continued, brushing imaginary dust from my jacket. "Business associates get contracts and terms. Since we're no longer family, I'll be adjusting our relationship accordingly." Marcus's confident smirk had disappeared entirely. I turned and walked toward the exit, my footsteps echoing across the silent reception hall. Behind me, I heard Emma's voice, higher now, uncertain. "Grandpa, wait. What does that mean? What are you talking about?" But I didn't turn around. I pushed through the ornate doors and stepped into the cool evening air, leaving behind the wedding I'd helped fund and the granddaughter I'd raised. As I walked to my car, one thought filled my mind with crystal clarity. Emma had no idea that Sunday night would be her last night in my house. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, matching my mood perfectly. I sat in Patricia's office at 8 a.m. sharp, the wedding still fresh in my memory like an infected wound. "How did it go?" Patricia asked, though my expression probably told her everything. "She called me family dependency in front of 150 people, I said. Told me to leave because I represent old thinking. Marcus explained that successful people don't carry emotional baggage." Patricia nodded, unsurprised. "So we proceed as planned?" "We proceed as planned." The first document went out at 9 a.m. Formal eviction notice delivered by certified mail to Emma's address. My address, technically, 30 days to vacate the premises as required by state law for property owners terminating free residence agreements. Tuesday brought the boutique loan acceleration notice. $180,000 due in full within 60 days, or I would exercise my rights as primary guarantor to seize business assets for debt satisfaction. Wednesday, I reclaimed Margaret's jewelry collection through the loan agreements Emma had signed 5 years earlier. Every piece documented, every signature witnessed, every legal requirement satisfied. Patricia handled the paperwork with professional efficiency, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Harold, are you prepared for the consequences? Emma will likely never speak to you again." I thought about Emma's voice at the wedding. Family dependency, old thinking, emotional baggage. "Patricia, she already stopped speaking to me. I'm just making it official." Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I hesitated. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe the shock of real consequences had reminded her of 25 years of love and sacrifice. "Grandpa, what's happening?" Her voice was high, panicked. "They're saying we have to move out? That you're taking back Grandma's jewelry? This has to be a mistake." No apology, no acknowledgement of her wedding day cruelty, just outrage that her free ride was ending. "Emma, you said I wasn't family anymore. I'm simply adjusting our relationship to reflect that reality." "But Grandpa, I didn't mean." "Family gets unconditional support," I interrupted, my voice steady and calm. "Business associates get contracts and terms. You made it very clear which category I belong in." The silence stretched between us. I could hear her breathing, rapid and shallow. "You can't do this," she finally whispered. "This is my home, my business, my life. It's my house, Emma, my loan guarantees, my jewelry. Your life was built on my generosity, which you've made clear you no longer want or need." She started crying then, the same tears that used to break my heart when she was small, but something inside me had crystallized into something harder than sympathy. "Please, Grandpa. We can work this out. We can talk." We did talk, Emma. At your wedding, in front of 150 people, you made your position very clear. I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang again immediately, but I didn't answer. But the real shock came when Marcus tried to threaten me. Friday evening, I was preparing a simple dinner in my apartment when someone pounded on my door. Aggressive, impatient knocking that echoed through my small space like gunshots. I opened the door to find Marcus standing in my hallway, his hedge fund composure replaced by raw fury. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. "Listen, old man, this little tantrum of yours ends now." He pushed past me into my apartment without invitation, looking around at my modest furniture and simple decorations with obvious disdain. "Emma made a mistake, but you're being vindictive. Emotional, exactly the kind of thinking that keeps people poor." I closed the door calmly and walked to my small bar cart, pouring myself 2 fingers of whiskey. I didn't offer Marcus anything. "We'll give you visitation rights," Marcus continued, pacing my living room like he owned it. "Holidays, birthdays, whatever keeps you happy. But you can't destroy her life over hurt feelings." His condescension was breathtaking. This man who'd never built anything, never earned anything through actual work, was lecturing me about emotional maturity. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed me a glossy brochure. "Look, we found you a nice place. Sunset Manor, clean, safe, good activities program. You'll be much happier there than rattling around this depressing apartment." The same nursing home Emma had discussed during her phone call. They were still trying to warehouse me, even after I'd demonstrated my legal power. The monthly fee is $8,000, which is steep, but you can afford it. Emma researched the best facilities in the area. I took a slow sip of whiskey, studying Marcus over the rim of my glass. This was the man who'd convinced my granddaughter to discard me, standing in my home, threatening me with the exact fate they'd planned. "Marcus, you seem confused about the power dynamic here." My voice came out quiet, almost conversational. "Emma owes me $380,000 between the house down payment, jewelry loans, and business guarantees. You have no income without her boutique, which I can shutter tomorrow." Marcus's confident expression flickered for the first time. "Please, continue explaining how this works." That's when Marcus made the mistake that sealed their fate permanently. His mask slipped completely, revealing the entitled rage underneath his polished exterior. "You bitter old fool." Marcus's voice cracked with fury. "Emma gave you purpose when your wife died. Without her, you're just some lonely construction worker waiting to die in this pathetic apartment." He gestured around my modest living room with contempt. "We're doing you a favor by staying in your life. Do you think anyone else cares about some washed-up contractor with no family?" The words hit exactly where he intended. But instead of breaking me, they crystallized something cold and final in my chest. Marcus actually laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You think you're punishing us? Emma will inherit everything when you croak anyway. All this legal drama is just postponing the inevitable." There it was, the truth underneath all their planning. I wasn't a grandfather to be managed or a person to be respected. I was a bank account with an expiration date. "The smart play here is cooperation," Marcus continued, his confidence returning. "Fight us, and we'll make sure your final years are very lonely. No visits, no calls, no contact at all. Work with us, and you get to be grandpa on holidays." He pulled out his phone again, scrolling through contacts. "I know people, Harold. Lawyers who can tie up your estate in probate for years. Emma's your only heir, but inheritances can get complicated when family relationships are contested." The threat was clear and calculated. Play along with their plans or die alone while they fought over my assets in court. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 72 years, but also feeling something new. Not anger or hurt, but a cold certainty that had been building since the wedding. "Thank you for clarifying your position, Marcus. It helps me finalize mine." Marcus smirked, mistaking my calm for capitulation. "Good. I knew you'd see reason eventually. Emma was worried you'd be stubborn, but you're smarter than that." I walked to the door and opened it. "I think our conversation is finished. We'll start looking at nursing home availability next week," Marcus said, walking toward the exit with renewed swagger. "Nothing too rushed, but Emma wants this transition handled smoothly." After he left, I sat in my chair and finished my whiskey, staring out the window at the city lights. Marcus had confirmed everything I'd suspected and removed any lingering doubt about their intentions. They didn't just want to abandon me. They wanted to control me, warehouse me, and profit from my death. Monday morning I made a phone call that changed everything forever. "David? It's Uncle Harold. I need to ask you something important." David Morrison was Margaret's nephew, the son of her younger sister, a good man who'd inherited the family farm in Oregon but struggled with modern agricultural economics. He had 3 young children and a wife who worked double shifts at the local hospital to keep their family afloat. David had driven 12 hours to attend Margaret's funeral, bringing his whole family to pay respects. He'd stayed an extra day to help me sort through Margaret's belongings, never asking for anything but offering quiet support when I needed it most. "Uncle Harold, is everything okay? You sound serious." I told him everything. The wedding humiliation, the overheard conversation about nursing homes, Marcus's threats, Emma's calculated betrayal. David listened without interrupting, the same way Margaret used to when I talked through difficult decisions. "I'm transferring the house to you and your children," I said when I finished. "Emma has 30 days to vacate." The silence stretched across the phone line. I could hear farm sounds in the background. Chickens, distant machinery. The life David was building with honest work. "Uncle Harold, I can't accept that. The house is worth over $1 million. The house was Margaret's dream, David. She wanted it to stay in the family. Real family. People who remember where they came from and respect the people who helped them get there." I heard David's voice crack slightly. "Are you sure? This seems so sudden." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. By Tuesday, Patricia had prepared the property transfer documents. The house, all furnishings, and the surrounding land would pass to David and his children as an irrevocable gift. Wednesday, I liquidated Emma's boutique assets to satisfy her outstanding loan obligations. The business credit I'd guaranteed was terminated, the equipment was seized, and the lease was broken. Emma's dream business disappeared as quickly as she'd dismissed me from her life. Thursday, I distributed Margaret's jewelry collection to her surviving relatives. The pearl necklace went to Margaret's niece Sarah, who visited Margaret's grave every month with fresh flowers. The diamond earrings went to Margaret's great-niece, a young woman studying to become a teacher. Each piece found a home with someone who remembered Margaret with genuine love. Friday, I established a trust fund for David's children's education. The money Emma would have inherited, nearly $800,000, would instead fund college educations for 3 children whose parents taught them the value of hard work and family loyalty. Emma arrived at my apartment Saturday morning and I almost didn't recognize her. The polished confidence from her wedding had vanished, replaced by red eyes and desperate panic. "Grandpa, please. I love you." I was confused, stressed about the wedding. Marcus pressured me, but I never meant any of it. She collapsed onto my couch, sobbing with the same intensity she'd shown as a child. For a moment, watching her breakdown, I felt my resolve waver. "The nursing home thing was just talk," she continued through her tears. "We were scared about taking care of you as you got older. We didn't know how to handle it properly." I sat across from her, studying the woman I'd raised from childhood. She looked young again in her distress, vulnerable and lost. "Marcus is gone," she whispered. "He left when the money disappeared, said I was too much drama for his career." Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fix her problems the way I always had. But I remembered her voice on the phone, casual and calculating. "The old man's been useful, but he's becoming a liability. Grandpa, I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be better. I'll visit every day, cook Sunday dinners, whatever you want. Just please don't destroy my life over one mistake." I looked at my granddaughter, this woman I'd raised, sacrificed for, loved unconditionally, and felt nothing but cold sadness mixed with clarity. "Emma, you made your choice very clearly. You're not family anymore, remember?" The words she'd used at her wedding, the same dismissal she'd given me in front of 150 strangers, hung between us like a wall. Her sobs intensified. But they sounded different now, not the genuine grief of loss, but the desperate panic of someone realizing their safety net had been permanently removed. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where I'd built my life through decades of honest work. The house belongs to David now. The business is closed. The jewelry has been distributed to family members who actually act like family. "But I am family," Emma screamed, her voice breaking. "I'm your granddaughter. Doesn't that mean anything?" I turned back to her, seeing both the 3-year-old who'd cried on my doorstep and the 28-year-old who'd planned to warehouse me for convenience. "It means everything and nothing. Emma, you'll always be the little girl I raised, but you're also the woman who calculated my disposal like a business transaction." She tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "You made it very clear that family love isn't enough anymore, that my values are outdated, My presence is negative, and my purpose is financial support until I become inconvenient." Emma's face crumpled, but she didn't deny my words. "I'm not angry, Emma. I'm just sad. Sad that the person I raised turned into someone who could plan my abandonment while living in the house I built." 6 months later, I learned the final cost of their betrayal. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, forwarded through Patricia's office with a return address I didn't recognize. Emma's handwriting, but shaky, desperate. I opened it slowly, sitting in my comfortable chair with afternoon sunlight streaming through my apartment windows. "Dear Grandpa," it began, and I could almost hear her voice, small and broken. "I know I have no right to contact you after everything that happened. Marcus and I are divorced. The financial stress destroyed our marriage within 3 months. I'm working retail now, living in a studio apartment, trying to rebuild the business credit you destroyed." I set the letter down for a moment, processing this information without satisfaction or regret. Just acknowledgement of consequences playing out exactly as they should. Marcus moved back with his parents in Connecticut. Turns out hedge fund princes aren't much good at actual hardship. He blamed me for losing our assets, as if he'd ever contributed anything but manipulation and entitlement. The letter continued for 2 pages, detailing Emma's new reality: minimum wage jobs, student loan payments she could barely afford, the struggle to rebuild a life without the financial foundation I'd provided for 25 years. "I know I hurt you terribly, but I'm your granddaughter. Doesn't that mean anything? I'm not asking for money or forgiveness, just acknowledgement that I exist, that the 25 years we shared counted for something." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box with all her childhood photos, report cards, dance recitals, college graduation pictures, birthday celebrations, 25 years of love, sacrifice, and genuine joy. It means everything and nothing, I thought, echoing my own words from 6 months earlier. She'll always be the little girl I raised, but she's also the woman who planned to warehouse me for convenience. Both versions are true. Both versions are permanent. I sleep peacefully in my small apartment, knowing David's children will have opportunities. Emma threw away. The farm in Oregon is thriving with the house sale proceeds. David sent photos last month. His youngest daughter learning piano in Margaret's old music room. His son building a treehouse in the oak tree I planted 30 years ago. Sometimes family is who raises you. Sometimes it's who respects you. Emma chose to make me neither. The construction company I built from nothing continues to thrive under new management. Patricia helped me structure the ownership transition to my most loyal employees, men who'd worked beside me for decades and understood the value of earned success. My legacy is secure, just not with the person I'd originally planned. I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone who no longer deserves it. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.